I like Chloe Grace Moretz, but the rest of her body is aging, but her face is not. She perpetually looks like a 12-year-old to me.
Where are the candles?
In the cabinet.
Lindsay here, and this is my review for Greta. A couple days ago, I went and saw the new Chloe Grace Moretz movie called Greta. The basic storyline is there's this girl who's living in New York. She's working as a waitress. She lives with her much more financially privileged best friend. And one day on the subway, she finds a purse sitting on the seat, no one around. So she decides to return it to its rightful owner. She takes it to the house. There's this very lonely old woman, and they spark up a friendship, and the old lady turns out to be a complete fucking psycho. There's the story. In this film, you have Chloe Grace Moretz, who is fine in the film. She doesn't bring anything particularly interesting or spectacular to the role, but it's not that complex or deep of a role anyways. So not much was being asked of her, and so she didn't deliver very much. The titular Greta is played by Isabella Huppert, and she does a good job. I mean, she's not overtly creepy. I mean, she's a 70-year-old woman, which makes a few of her actions in and of themselves creepy just because they're being done by a 70-year-old woman. But other than that, it's nothing that hasn't been done before. The roommate is played by Micah Monroe, who you may know from It Follows and The Guest. I really like her in those movies, and this one, it was a pretty superficial character. There wasn't a lot to her, so it wasn't a very demanding role. It wasn't very challenging. I don't think any of these roles were extremely challenging for the actors. So her performance didn't stand out in any way. In fact, I don't think she quite fit the character that doesn't have to worry about money, kind of a celebutante type. I didn't think she fit that character very well. Her look and demeanor are much more working class.
She's really freaking me out.
The story in and of itself isn't terribly original either, except for the part of the woman leaving purses for these young girls to find. That part is pretty original. But the rest of the story is pretty predictable and nothing shocking. Throughout the escalation of the stalking, there's a lot of false starts. Just things start to ramp up and then they grind to a halt, and then they start to ramp up again and then they grind to a halt. And so the pacing of this film was all over the place for me. And then when we get to the final act, it pretty much just turns into misery.
You fooler.
She's got her locked up, tied to a bed. I mean, even an authority figure comes and is killed and thrown in the basement. And so yeah, the last part of the movie just turns into misery.
Well, I'll get your stupid paper, but you just better start showing me a little more appreciation around here, Mr. Man.
The one thing that really bothered me in this film, and what I couldn't understand, is when Chloe Grace Moretz's character goes missing, the roommate thinks that she's on a trip with her father, and her father thinks she's on a trip with the roommate. So no one really knows that she's missing for at least a week. I don't know, the time is very muddled, the time progression. But for about a week, nobody knows she's missing. And while this is going on, Greta is like sending messages to the roommate and the father from Chloe's phone. But when they do figure out that she is in fact missing, there's no scene where they go to the police and report her missing and ask for their help to find her. The dad goes to a private investigator to find the lady, but I don't understand why they wouldn't just go to the cops, because the cops arrested this woman and took her away to the loony bin because of a previous incident, And so they know who this woman is. They know her name, they know where she lives, and they have enough probable cause for at least a search warrant. And once they execute that search warrant, they're gonna find the girl tied up in the spare room, and they can tell how long she's been there, because if you pull those cell records, they're gonna tell that the messages to the father and the roommate were being pinged off her phone in that area where Greta lives. The ending is so stupid because, like I said, they never show them contacting the cops in any way whatsoever. So they're not involving the authorities at all. But the roommate decides to disguise herself in a wig and sunglasses and just sit on random subway trains waiting to see another purse pop up. And randomly it happens. We don't know how long she's been trying to do this, but the scene just starts where we see another girl bringing another purse to Greta. We don't see the face, but you can tell it's that actress because you can tell her voice. You recognize her voice. You're like, oh, it's the roommate. From the very second that scene starts, you can tell it's the roommate. But they try to hide it so it's some big reveal, and it's not, because you can totally tell it's the roommate. And so the roommate drugs Greta, and there's several different fights, and somehow a 70-year-old woman isn't heavily affected by roofies. Once the roommate gets Chloe away into safety, Chloe asks how long she's been there, and the roommate just says too long. So we're just kind of left to assume that she's been there a very, very long time. Even though there's not like there's a progression to where, you know, she's fighting Greta to where she's a little more complacent, but it's so compressed you have no idea how long it's been going on. So it doesn't seem authentic or natural. But yeah, I had kind of high hopes for this movie, that it would be at least visually interesting, or there'd be some interesting and original twist to the ending. But no, you see it coming from a mile away, and it just turns to misery at the end of the film. And there are parts that are just laughably stupid. Laughably stupid. Like the time when Chloe Grace Moretz almost runs her roommate over in a taxi while she's being stalked by Greta. It's just dumb. It's really dumb. There's one creepy part where Isabella Huppert like barks out this Hungarian curse or something at her. That's kind of creepy. But then they also do these other things to try to make her seem creepy, but they just come off as laughable. Like when she drugs the private investigator guy, she's like doing all these, they show her stacking feet on the floor, and they're doing all these weird kicks and stuff, and it just seems just weird. It's not creepy or scary, it's just funny. And I think they were trying to be like, oh, she's weird, she's dancing and her feet are moving really fast, and it just looks really stupid. Really stupid. Well, that's gonna do it for this review. Until next time, this is Lindsay signing off. I'll check you later.